man, if I'm coming into this new year feeling a bit anxious, I'm sure there are others out there that were feeling the same way. So I had the great idea to hit up my great friend, our resident psychiatrist on the pod.
So with mental health is defined or conceptualized by the World Health Organization as a state of well-being, being able to cope with stressors, understanding how to function fruitfully in the world and be aid to society, essentially. How often do you get your annuals?
Once a year. Okay.
So if your body, right?
I guess we had this conversation the last time, right?
So that means you're not even following up like
No.
advice.
That's because usually you don't. Man, that's a good point, Dred.
But like my paper deleted and I had like 5 minutes before I had to turn it in, and like
Right.
I can't tell you what happened in the next 10 minutes. Like I do not have any recollection, but I know when I came to, the paper was written again.
Write a paper in 10 minutes. What's up everyone? Welcome to the new episode of the Myles High podcast. My name is Myles Jr. I'm your host. And as always, the goal of this podcast is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist. Always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right. So I got a great pod today. I'm excited about this pod. I have my first guest for the year. Coming into this year, I was super anxious, right? I mentioned this in my earlier pod, one of my earlier pods. I had a lot of anxiety coming into this year, and it was mainly because of like the things that I had planned for this year, right? The goals that I've set, the accomplishments that I hope to achieve. So I was a little anxious. And I told you guys I went through my fast and was kind of reminded of how important faith is, when it comes to just believing in the things that we've set forth in our personal lives, professional lives, and our spiritual lives for us to accomplish. But I was thinking on, that particular episode, and I thought, man, if I'm coming into this new year feeling a bit anxious, feeling a little bit of anxiety, I'm sure there are others out there that were feeling the same way. So I had the great idea to hit up my great friend and our resident psychiatrist on the pod. I want to welcome back to the pod Dr. Davina Knowles-Robinson. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I figured this would be a good pod, a good reason to bring you back onto the pod. We have entered into, technically we're in the third month of the year now. So a lot of people have, really gone through the first 2 months feeling out like the goals and things they've set for themselves and, kind of figuring out how the planning went. But I'm sure there are persons that still experience, anxiety, and not just anxiety for coming into a new year, but anxiety just in general, right? There are things that we go through in life that, we become anxious about. So I figured this would be a good conversation for us to have and just to get first of all, your expertise on the subject, and for you to shed some light on some advice that we can have on overcoming these anxious feelings that we have. All right. So, first of all, welcome again. Thank you.
Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for coming.
So happy to be here.
So I'm always glad when I could, get some professionals to come on, like people who are credible on the subject that we're talking about. And I think you're definitely credible on this subject of anxiety, and that's where I want to start, right? So let's start with, I guess, defining what anxiety is.
Right, and as you know, me being here the second time, I like to start out what's normal versus what's abnormal, right? So what?
Go ahead.
So with mental health is defined or conceptualized by the World Health Organization as a state of well-being, being able to cope with stressors, understanding how to function fruitfully in the world and be aid to society, essentially. So with anxiety, everybody has anxiety. As you mentioned, it's normal. It's what's expected.
So being anxious or having anxiety is not really a bad thing, right?
No. So I like to do illustrations.
Okay.
So if you were walking on the beach and this huge German Shepherd came and was like, hey, here I am, essentially, what do you feel?
Fear.
You feel fear?
Shock, I guess, surprise.
Tell me your bodily functions.
Well, my adrenaline definitely kicks in. I might get tight and feel the urge to like run or just be aware of, okay, the dog is there. Is there anything that I need to do? Or
maybe your heart starts to pound.
Definitely.
You breathe heavy.
Start sweating.
You start sweating. Your muscles, like you said, contract. Those are feelings of anxiety, right? And that's normal because we determine that as a fight or flight. When you're in that moment, the goal is for your body to have these bodily reactions to stimuli and to try to get out of it. But imagine having that feeling or these sensations and you're just sitting on the couch. You're watching TV and you can't turn it off. Nothing is triggering you to have this feeling. And that's what anxiety is, essentially.
Okay.
It is that abnormal, excessive fear that you're having these bodily sensations and you can't turn it off. And so there's an umbrella of anxiety disorders like panic disorder, generalized anxiety, social phobias, fears of open spaces called agoraphobia, anxiety due to a medical condition, anxiety due to substances, right? And so under this umbrella, you can have these different anxiety disorders. And that's what accounts for it being one of the most prevalent mental disorders, because generally the general physicians see these anxiety disorders because now they're presenting with heart palpitations or the sweating and the muscle tension. And so they're going to their general doctors and they're trying to be treated, but the ECG is normal. The chest x-rays, they're normal. So the lab studies, they're all normal. So now you're getting referred to the psychiatrist. But if you were checking in with your psychiatrist like you should at least once a year, then maybe you would have been, treated appropriately for it.
Oh, whoa. So we should have a psychiatric visit once a year?
How often do you get your annuals?
Once a year. Okay.
So if your body, right?
I guess we got this conversation
right.
the last time, right?
So that means you're not even following up like
no.
advice.
That's because usually you don't. Man, that's a good point, Dred. Because I wouldn't think to, like, obviously I want to check my physical health.
Correct.
Right. Because that's just what we have learned and been taught to do.
Right.
But you don't really think of, well, let me go get a mental check.
And you should be doing that annually.
Right.
You should get your mental checks at least once a year.
Makes sense.
Because then you'll be like being able to pinpoint these disorders as they come about.
What's a mental check? What happens in a mental check?
So generally a mental check is you coming in, talking about your day-to-day, what's been going on for the year, us trying to decide if there's any pathology there, if there's any illness that we need to prime into a little bit more, because maybe we need to work on your coping skills. Maybe there's some depression-like symptoms that you're displaying. Maybe there's some anxiety-like symptoms that you're showing. Just because you've not spoken about it to somebody else, it's going unmarked, unchecked.
So it's just like a series of questions that are asked. Like, are there any like physical tests that are done in mental checks? Generally,
with most of the illnesses or on the spectrum of the DSM-5, it's not due to a medical condition. So ideally we do lab works, make sure that unless you've already gotten your annual physical, making sure that there's no underlying pathology, meaning underlying illnesses that can be causing these symptoms to occur as well.
Oh, okay. So you do blood work and stuff labs for mental checks as well?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, cool. Makes sense. Let's get back to speaking about anxiety, right? We've kind of gave a broad definition of it, maybe even a few examples of what it looks like.
Right.
Where would you like to take the conversation from here? Like what are other aspects of this thing that we go through as human beings? A normal thing, right? But it could get to the point where we're experiencing things that we shouldn't be experiencing or that are abnormal for us to be experiencing.
So maybe dissecting one or two of the types of anxiety.
Okay.
So the anxiety is very common. Globally, it affects 300 plus million So that's 4% of the world that is affected by anxiety. It's typically seen by your general practitioner because you're presenting with these abnormal bodily functions, right? More likely it's women over men. More likely it's children, and they just start displaying different features. So one of the types of anxiety that we spoke about was panic disorders, right? So with panic disorders, you start off with a panic attack. It can come out of anywhere. And you could be sitting, like I said, sitting on the couch, relaxing, or triggered by a memory, something that might have happened in your past, and you start to have 4 or more bodily sensations, whether it be palpitations, shortness of breath, chest pain, muscle tension, sweaty palms, feeling like you're going to die, feeling like you're going crazy, out-of-body experience, etc. There's like 11. So if you have 4 of those together and you're having it for 10 minutes, that's a panic attack.
Oh, wow.
If with the panic attack, you now had that experience, it lasted 5 to 10 minutes or more, you might have gone to the doctor, they did the test, everything was normal. Now, the fear of you having one of those episodes again within that month and recurrent episodes of that happening, and the thought that, oh my God, I'm going to have it or try to avoid having it, that is a panic disorder. So that is something that we can try to treat, whether it be biopsychosocial, and that's the model that we use for all disorders. So the biologics are the medications. The psychotherapy is talk therapy, CBT, where you're talking about changing the mind, thought, and your behavioral functions. Humanitarian, there's a whole class of psychotherapy. And then social, involving your family, your church, your gym partners, etc. Right? Trying to holistically treat. So an example of psychotherapy, and that's probably what I'm going to give a lot more examples towards. So things that you can do at home.
Okay.
So I want you to just stop. So we're actually going to do it together, right?
So this is if I'm having a panic attack?
So typically what I tell
a panic disorder.
Typically what I tell my patients are people that have anxiety. I want you to practice it in the morning and practice it at night. Same as the gym. You only get strong because you do it.
Oh, okay.
So when you need to be strong, you're able to do it.
Got you. So
if that's something that it becomes your automatic default, if you have practiced it, you know what to do when you're having this attack. So this
isn't only for when you experience an attack. This is so you're training your body, your mind to be prepared for when the attack happens.
Perfect.
And you're able to, I guess, overcome it.
Right.
Got you.
So it's essentially you taking a deep breath in through your nose, holding that for 4 seconds, and blowing it out through your mouth, and holding that for 4 seconds. And it's typically for a cycle of 10. So we'll do it for 5.
I'm sorry, it's for
a cycle of 10. So you're doing that same thing 10 times.
Okay.
So I want you to do it.
We got to do it
for 5. Yes, I want you to let's see, and then we're gonna have a little experiment after.
Okay. I thought you were counting.
That's 1. Perfect.
Take it seriously.
Right.
Trying to look at the audience. For my visual audience.
1 more. So if done right, sometimes I do either put your hand on your stomach, you bring it in, and almost like you're releasing, right? In that cycle of 5, were you able to think of anything else if you were doing it properly? Like if you just concentrated on your breathing?
No.
You're concentrating only on your breathing.
Right.
Can you think about being anxious? Can you think about your heart racing? Can you think about what might be wrong with you? No, because you're concentrating essentially on breathing.
Right.
And even in that moment, your heart is slowing down. I'm pretty sure you felt a little bit more relaxed. Your heart got to slow down. You're not as sweaty. Your breathing slowed down. And in that moment, you felt a little bit better. So that's just one quick tip that's, very easy to do.
And that's been known to work. So that, I guess would you term that also like a form of meditation in a sense?
So meditation is its own genre. Like I said, a lot of things kind of overlap.
Got you.
Mindfulness, being able to be aware, grounding exercises. So that's one that I do as well, where you use your senses, right? So now grounding works because the person is abnormally thinking that this thing is out to get me, hurt me. I am over exaggerating what this stimuli is. So if you're grounding, you're bringing yourself back down to reality. So 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can smell, 2 things that you can taste, 1 thing that you can feel, essentially.
And this is a practice that you do like twice a day as well? Or once a day?
I mean, it's typically best when you are having the panic.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right, because it's like, okay, I'm grounding myself. 5 things that I can see, I can quickly do that.
Sure.
4 things I can feel myself. Typically, I tell my patients, take off your shoes. I can feel the ground. Literally, this is real. This couch is real. I am real. I know that these things are real. Whatever I'm thinking, these are abnormal thoughts. That's not real. 2 things that I could smell. Breathe in your breath, that type of thing. So it's just bringing you back down because now you're refocusing your mind. Because essentially we're not superhuman, right? So you only can kind of focus on one thing at a time. If you're focusing on the panic, if you're focusing on these bodily sensations, you're just going to go with that negative thought. But the goal is to disengage.
So for persons who, I guess they could do what did you call the 5?
Grounding exercises.
The grounding exercises. So that typically happens during an episode, right?
Right.
But are there things that you can do to prevent an episode from happening altogether? Or is that not realistic in a sense?
So the first thing is to disengage from the thing. If you already have these anxiety feelings, trying to reform or retrain your mind that these things are abnormal. More times than not, people have anxiety over certain situations, like talking, going up on stage. And so in that moment, you're going to have to do the exercises to practice. That's why I told the people, my clients, to practice these certain exercises when they're not having them.
I don't know if that has worked though. Because like, I'm sure everyone has a fear of public speaking, right? And I know when I used to have a fear, I would do the breathing exercise. Like, all right, just calm down. Like, think positively, like breathe, relax. And I go there and still like be sweaty and shaking. You know what I mean? Like, right. It might not be obvious to the audience, but I know like I'm very anxious in that moment.
Right.
And like another thing is, and I realized this maybe on my last 2 visits, right? So when I go to do my yearly physicals, for some reason I'm always anxious when they're taking my blood pressure.
It's called white coat syndrome. That's actually a thing. So
Really?
It's a phobia. So that's under the spectrum of anxiety disorders, where people actually feel anxious about going to the doctor.
So I don't think it's anxious. It's at least from what I would say, it's literally just from getting my blood pressure measured. And I think it's because I'm always like, I want to be healthy. Right. So I was anxious of my blood pressure got to be normal. Like, you know what I mean? And
right.
I was talking to my doctor at one point because some of my levels were like high, right? And they were a bit worried. And I was like, I think I'm normal because like I don't feel, I feel a certain type of way coming into the office, right? Because I know I'm going to get my blood pressure done. So what they had me do just to be safe was to purchase a blood pressure monitor. And they wanted me to periodically monitor myself throughout like a week, a couple of times a day. And just as long as I get a normal or average reading throughout that week, then we know, I'm just super anxious, like when I go to the doctor. And that's what it turned out to be, right? Because my blood pressure was normal, when I'm home and just taking it on my own versus going to the doctor and being like, yo, I hope I get a good reading.
So that's called exposure therapy. So exposing yourself to the thing that you fear. So the more times you do it, the less likely that you're going to feel this apprehension, this fear of, is it going to be normal? Am I going to be okay? So that's, like you said, you've already coached yourself. So they told you to expose yourself a little bit more. And then so when you have this experience, you realize there's nothing really to fear.
And I guess that's with most, I wouldn't say everything, most things that we fear, right? There's always this recommendation of like just facing it, right? And putting yourself in that uncomfortable situation or that fearful situation. With public speaking, for example, I guess the thing is, like, the more you do it, the
Correct.
easier it becomes.
Right.
So you get less anxious about it because you build your confidence in doing it.
Correct.
And I guess that works pretty much for everything else.
I wouldn't say it can work. It is a good form of therapy because
Gotcha.
it's not a one glove fit all. Like,
Gotcha.
even though this one medication might work for Paul, Jane might not respond so well to that medication. So it's the same where there's so many schools of thought, so many schools of thinking of treating that one desensitization method, that exposure therapy might not work for everybody else.
So I know, like, my Sharice and I would talk, and she would mention that she used to have like panic attacks,
Right.
but she don't. I don't think you have panic attacks a lot no more.
No, I
right?
just had one.
Oh, just one panic attack.
Yeah.
You remember what brought it on?
Yeah, I had a paper due and the computer blanked out and
Oh no,
like my
you've
paper
had,
deleted.
You've had thousands of other
No,
panic attacks.
no.
Just
That's
based
just
off.
an anxiety attack, not like one of those bad ones. But like my paper deleted and I had like 5 minutes before I had to turn it in, and like
Right.
I can't tell you what happened in the next 10 minutes. Like I do not have any recollection, but I know
But
when
you
I
wrote your
came to,
paper?
the paper was written
Dog read a
again.
paper in
And-
10 minutes.
And so that's what we're saying. That's normal. Like, that's a stimuli that cause this response. And so, like I said, everybody has anxiety.
So if there is a stimuli, then it's normal. Because and the reason I ask is, like, sometimes, like, if I have to have a conversation with Sharice that I am dreading to have, and I become anxious or get a panic attack or anything that I do, right? I'm in a situation and I just, like, this sense of, a good thing for me is being out in public.
Right.
I get super anxious just being in, like, public, or knowing, like, I'm gonna have to, like, talk to people I don't know. Or
That's
whatever.
agoraphobia.
I don't have a fear of being. I don't think I'm on the spectrum, but I'm maybe not. I'm maybe, like, low on the spectrum.
Right.
But I do have anxiety with, like, social interaction.
Right.
100%. So with the stimuli being there, is it normal?
So the abnormal part of it is, can you function? Are you able to get through it? Is it consuming your life? Are you now staying indoors because now
Gotcha.
I don't want to be
So
outside?
you just avoid it.
You avoid it.
Got you.
Right? So that's where, when you're not functioning, when you're not able to work, when you're not able to do your daily activities, take care of your hygiene, that's when we're going to see that pathology.
So if I am able to control it or function,
Right.
then what is it termed? I'm just
Is he high
And
functioning?
anxiety not otherwise specified, right? So that is a class. It actually is a class. Like, I'm not even
okay.
kidding or whatever.
I'm happy you said that because I'm the one that has anxiety, and he was always telling me, "Oh, you just gotta calm down. You gotta calm down." But yet, I feel he suffers from it in a different way than I do.
Sure.
And yeah, so there's another term under the umbrella, or another spectrum, called generalized anxiety, and that's the worry about everything. So you fear the world, right?
Well, she ain't that bad. She don't fear the world.
Well,
Not
no,
the world, but
She
like
fear a lot.
like, it's not just one specific thing. It's
Yeah.
work. It's what I have to do tomorrow. It's all of these other things. So it's 6 different symptoms that you can display. So it changes your sleep, irritability, your concentration, you're more fatigued, etc. So if you have that within a month, and it's this generalized fear that kind of consumes you, that's generalized anxiety.
Got you. And the same, breathing methods and grounding
exercises. So there's others, like guided imagery, right? So where you can close your eyes and picture yourself in your most peaceful state. I like to use the beach because we have beautiful beaches, right?
Sure.
And you're able to visualize exactly what the beach has. So it's almost like the grounding, where you're visualizing a peaceful situation. You picture what you see. I see the blue waters, I see the waves, I see the sand, etc. Now you fully immerse yourself. What do you feel? I feel the cool wind, I feel the sand on my feet, I feel the cool water, etc. What do you smell? Maybe somebody barbecuing. Fully immersing yourself into that experience to now take you out of this anxious state. That's one way. I speak about sleep hygiene because that's something that you can do because it does affect your sleep. And a lot of the disorders in mental illness affect your sleep. And so a lot of people complain of insomnia. And so there are ways that you can improve your sleep habits just as you have general hygiene with sleep.
I wonder if I have a mental disorder, Jared.
You probably on the spectrum of something.
Bro,
You do have a sleep issue.
my sleep, I don't think, it's not in, like the other night, literally I couldn't go to sleep. Like I, turned my phone off, the lights was off, laying in bed, couldn't go to sleep. I just was laying there for like 2-3 hours to the point where I had to be like, all right, let me just cut the TV on. Because like, I just wasn't getting to sleep. Meanwhile, my wife on the side of me knocked right out.
Anxiety does not affect my sleep.
So and I guess I don't know, like I know when like dealing with things professionally, like at work, and my mind is trying to figure out, like, if there's an issue and I'm trying to figure out like how could I resolve it, or if there's a decision I have to make. I know that usually stays with me for a period of time.
Right.
And that could be a reason why I can't sleep.
Possibly. So when we speak about sleep hygiene, it's changing your habits, right? So making sure that you have these healthy habits. Some may work for you, some others might not. You might need a sleep aid. But before you get there, talking about what time do you go to bed? Do you set a bedtime? Is your room completely dark? So you spoke about the light, right? So making your mind be aware that this is sleep time. So bright lights, 30 minutes before you go to bed. You shouldn't be on your phone. You shouldn't be watching TV. Putting your phone literally maybe in the next room, because the urge to go and check, right? That's going to give you some apprehension.
Sure.
Exercising at the appropriate times. So not exercising right before bed, because that's going to increase your endorphins. Maybe exercising in the morning. Limiting caffeine and alcohol throughout the day. Using the bed, I say this for the 3 S's. Sleep, sickness, sex. So in your bed, you don't associate your bed with watching TV. You don't associate your bed with working. You don't associate your bed with anything outside of those 3 S's. Like I said, also, why am I having a brain fart?
It's okay. I mean, I for me, I don't know what this like sleep deprivation is, or inside. I don't think it's insomnia, because there are times when I'm able to sleep. I just know that there are periods where like getting to sleep is difficult, and I've always had a hard time getting to sleep. Like I tell Sharice all the time, if me and Sharice go to bed at the same time, within 5 minutes, Sharice could be knocked out. And I just look at her and be like, bro, that is a blessing. Like,
so you might have insomnia. So that is actually a disorder, like that's a disorder onto itself.
Okay.
I think his problem is he gets into bed, has his phone, turns the TV on 50.
You're not like practicing sleep hygiene.
Because I can't, I need sound.
Stimulation.
Well, see, I told him to use the
sound
this waves and
right,
stuff.
that might help.
That don't work
That
for
don't
me.
work for me.
Have you tried it?
No.
So how do you know it doesn't work if you
Exactly.
haven't tried it? Another thing that I was having this brain fart from, making a worry list. And that's great for people with anxiety, because typically you're ruminating with the thoughts of, what do I have to do tomorrow? Did I get this accomplished? Actually writing it down right before bed.
So I write, like I plan my days out, right? So
Right.
I do, these are the things I need to accomplish. These are the things I would like to accomplish. Like I kind of separate them like that. And things that I don't accomplish, I think it's more so the things that I don't accomplish is what, kind of bleeds over into like the night.
So do you write that down right before bed? What I didn't do, my worry list. What do I need to accomplish for tomorrow?
I can see the list that
See it where? In your head?
No, like the list that I have on a daily basis.
Okay.
Like these are, I could, if I don't check it off my list of what I've accomplished that I wanted to accomplish today,
Right.
that might bleed into like what I think about later that night.
So rewriting the list again to say, well, okay, I didn't accomplish these things, because you're not superhuman. You're not going to accomplish everything. Maybe you will one day, but today I didn't do it. And that's another, training your mind, because there are things that you can control and there are things that you can't. And anxiety is either worrying about the past, worrying about the future, and things that you cannot control.
Sure.
Can anybody have predicted the pandemic was going to come? Can you conceptualize that, hey, for almost 2 years, I'm not about to be moving up and down. I can't catch a flight. I'm literally locked into my home.
The worst.
The worst of the worst. But that's not something that we had any power to control.
Sure.
You only can control you, your space, your thoughts, your actions. You can't control Sharice. You can't control the man next door. The only person you can control is yourself, and the same for Sharice, right? So that is another way of retraining your mind that, yes, I didn't get the list all marked off, but I have an opportunity tomorrow to do it.
So hopefully my voice is an extension of like our listeners and viewers, right? Because I think when I talk about like these situations that I go through and the feelings that I'm feeling, like there's someone out there that's like, yo, I have the same experiences.
Right.
And, you know, the recommendations that you're giving will help them, or hopefully help them like work their way through it. But what you're saying about like worrying and you know, it doesn't make sense to worry. Like I truly believe that. And I think even though I know that and believe that, like I still find myself in situations where I wouldn't call it worrying, right? I think I'm just adamant that I want to get this issue resolved, right? And I for the most part, that's the best way that I could explain it. So I think my mind more so thinks along the lines of, this is an issue or a problem that is present. Let me try and, you know, put these different puzzle pieces in place to see if I can figure
You're
this
a fixer.
out. Yeah, I'm trying to like fix it in my head so that the next day I can, you know, go at that day attacking.
But do you know what tomorrow's going to bring?
Not at all.
So even though you've ruminated in your head, like this is what's going to happen and I can do it this way, tomorrow you might wake up to a flat tire.
Yeah.
Is that in the plan in your mind? Was that a possibility of something that could have happened? No. So even though you have these plans of things that you want to do, and I'm not saying not to plan.
Sure.
The goal is to plan. Have these thoughts and feelings that you want to accomplish, but don't ruminate over it, because if you micromanage every step, that's not life. Something's going to come in the way and upset that plan. So how are you going to pivot? That's the goal. Pivoting.
Got you. So let's talk about another, I guess another item or disorder under the umbrella of anxiety, right? So we spoke about panic attacks or panic anxiety. What's another one you could
generalized anxiety?
Oh, well, we spoke about that too.
Right. We spoke about specific phobias like speaking.
Oh, so all of these fall under the umbrella of anxiety.
Right.
Got you.
Agoraphobia, fear of spaces where you can't get out or having to engage with people, and that could be with or without panic disorder as well. Second,
I am pretty like I remember when I was in college, and I say these stories because I know like hopefully someone out there could relate to it, right? And I just want people to know that like these things are normal, right? And a lot of us go through them, even if you think you're going through it by yourself, right? Like I remember, I told my wife about this. This was years ago. Me and a friend of mine we were out, and we met these two females. Well, I think he knew a female, and she had a friend. So you know, like the wingman, you just kind of fill in for your boy or whatever. So I remember he was talking to the girl, and I was talking to a friend. And we were like maybe 3 feet away from each other, right? And I was consciously aware that while I was talking to this girl, I just started to sweat. I started to profusely sweat, right? And it was I was in my mind, I was trying to be like, all right, don't act nervous, bro. Like just chill out. Like what the hell is wrong with you, right? So got through the conversation. She didn't like mention it or whatever. So I'm still not even sure if she recognized it, right?
She might have just thought you were hot. So you overanalyzed this situation in your head.
No, I didn't. And here's how I know. When we were finished talking and like me and my boy walked away, the first thing he said to me was like, bro, what's going on with you?
Because he knows you though. But the girl who doesn't know
Fair
you
enough.
doesn't know if you have a high tolerance for sweat or if you're just a sweaty guy.
Yo,
like,
he looked at me. He was like, "You all right? Like, dog, why you sweating so much?" And you just sweat out. And I said, "Dog, I was nervous, boy.
Right.
Just nervous." And I think that's I guess we could call it the fear of
public speaking?
Because I'm not really fearful of public speaking. I think it's just certain moments that I get caught in that I
overthinking in your
overreact.
head.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Probably because I was in my mind, I wanted to be cool talking to this girl.
And you ended up not being.
And I was cool. I definitely was cool.
In your mind.
So you saying she might have been.
I don't know. But you don't know. Again, back to the things you can control versus the things you can't. Sure. You don't know what she was thinking, but now you have anxiety based on a situation that you've already ruminated in your head.
I do that a lot.
She might not even have known.
I analyze my day or like conversations. I be like, shucks, I should have said this.
Right.
Or why I say this. Like when me and Cherie's arguing. I just be like, mother.
I could have used this point. Too late.
Oh man. Yeah.
I mean, I feel that's normal. Though.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
But that's the error of trying to be perfect, and we're not going to be perfect. And that's just human nature.
No, I think this is good, man. This is good. Let me ask you a question. So you're a psychiatrist, right? Trained psychiatrist.
Fully trained, locked and loaded.
What makes you anxious?
Dogs. So that's why I use the dog analogy. Like, I don't like dogs. I have a specific phobia. I think another form of treatment is coping statements. When I see a dog, typically I'm able to talk myself down, especially if it's a smaller dog, because I was physically attacked by my own dog. So imagine going into your own home and like this big Roddy pins you to the wall and bites you. Like, I have a general fear because of something that happened. So through life, when I see a dog, I get a little startle, reflex, but then I talk to myself, I do the breathing exercises, and I am able to calm myself down a little bit more.
Almost always you're able to calm yourself down?
More times than not, unless the dog is now pursuing me for real. And it's just like, okay, my fear is not abnormal. Like, this is something I need to get out of.
Sure, because everyone would, whatever you feel in that moment, I'm sure everyone would feel.
Right.
Okay. Is there anything else that you are anxious about? Public speaking, being in a public environment,
So coming under the tutelage of the Dr. Myles Munroe, right? I have a fear of not fulfilling my purpose. So if in anything I'm doing, if it's not purpose driven, I'm like, sometimes I do ruminate. I do have insomnia. My husband could attest to this. There are times where I go to bed and I'm like, I get up at 2 and I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? So practicing those same strategies, sometimes it doesn't work, but I try to use the same strategies that I give my clients as well.
It doesn't even work for her sometimes. And this is the doctor talking, right? So we all go through the same emotions, the same feelings.
But I have a therapist too. So, I mean, sometimes a therapist needs a therapist.
No, for sure.
So, I mean, I'm able to discuss and bounce these ideas off of how I feel and try to normalize it a bit and try to work throughout those same feelings, these abnormal sensations.
Do you think we can ever get to the point as individuals where we don't experience anxiety? Like, is there a thing where someone is anxiety free?
I don't think so. Like I said, anxiety is normal. That is a normal response. So the pathology of having the disorder is abnormal. To say if we would ever get to a point, I don't think everybody has anxiety disorders.
Gotcha.
But there are things that you can do to cope with anxiety and not have the pathology.
Okay.
And I mean, speaking of like biblical principles, I feel like fear and anxiety comes up almost all of the time throughout the scriptures.
A verse that we had mentioned. God has not given us the spirit of fear, but the spirit of love and a sound mind, right? That's 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. And
Romans also speaks about be anxious for nothing, but in everything with prayer and supplication, make your voice be heard to God.
Yeah, but bro, when I tell you all, like, the life book really has the answers to everything, right? Like, it's there. And I think God understands his creation. He knows, like, we just sometimes could be some emotional creatures, and let me give y'all some medication or some advice for y'all to cope with, what you go through. Like,
speaking of medication, so sometimes the talk therapy, the mindfulness, those strategies don't work on their own. So someone like me, a medical practitioner, a psychiatrist, I can write a prescription for anxiolytic, an antidepressant, those things that can help with these abnormal sensations and feelings, because the talk therapy, the sleep hygiene, none of those things are really working. Maybe I need a sleep aid, those type of things that can kind of push me over. And studies have found that together, the medications along with the talk therapy and the social aspects are better than just one aspect
so
alone.
Sometimes you need a combination of two or three to see results.
Correct.
Got you. Man, so being anxious is normal, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's something that we all experience. Sometimes we experience it on different levels than others.
Right.
Because, Dr. Knowles-Robinson.
Don't forget the mans.
Dr. Knowles-Robinson's fear of dogs or anxiousness when it comes to dogs. I don't experience that.
Correct.
Right. I love dogs, unless obviously a dog is approaching in a menacing way. Then I think it's just normal for everyone to have whatever the reaction is going to be. People with fear of clowns, like that, always amazed me. Right.
Have you ever watched the Maury Show? And they had these segments. I remember watching it as a child. They'd have these different.
You aging us right now.
Sorry, I don't.
Some of our younger listeners be like, Maury.
Who's that person?
It's the Maury Show.
He used to have these phobia episodes that I really loved, yes. And people had fears of cotton balls, yes. And fears
and
of
weird stuff.
Right.
There was someone who had a fear of nails, or it was just these off the wall. And sometimes I never used to believe it. I thought they used to be playing it on the TV.
That's real.
But then I realized these are real
phobias.
Yeah, real phobias that people experience. And I had this friend in college. This guy literally had a fear of clowns, mm-hmm. right? And you hear someone have a fear of clowns, you're like, nah, bro.
They're the most no.
There's no way.
They're kind of scary
clowns,
though,
right? So he had a friend who one day decided to prank him and hired a clown to come to our dorms, bro. When I told you, when he saw this clown, he just no emotions, just went straight face, just stood there.
He could have had a heart attack.
No. He did. I mean, but we was bro, you're right. Because he wasn't moving. He wasn't no expression. He just was standing there staring at the clown. And it wasn't it was at that moment I realized, wow, this guy really fears clowns. As crazy as that may sound, it's a real thing.
It is real.
And I think, I gained a lot of empathy in that moment for him, because, sometimes you think man, clowns ain't nothing, you can't fear clowns, but that's for me, right? That's not saying that someone else would have, that same experience when it comes to clowns or anything that they have a phobia of.
And you hit the nail on the head as it pertains to mental illness. Mm-hmm. Your realization or what you perceive as normal or real to you is your experience. Sure. I can't minimize or negate what you're feeling, mm-hmm. right? So the whole goal of it is to try to change how you think, mm-hmm. so that you behave and respond differently. Mm-hmm. So that is a very important point.
Mm-hmm.
I hope he remembers this point when he tries to lock me in a small space that's dark. So and then when I start carrying on, he's like, "What's wrong with you?"
That's very mean.
I've done that once.
And that's scarring.
But we was having fun.
Oh,
fun for you.
We
clearly not.
No.
Well, you gotta pull out my business.
Because I'm
is key.
Thinking it's now, do I have agoraphobia or some type of phobia? Because I cannot be locked in.
Claustrophobia.
Because when I was even going up the what was that in Egypt? The pyramid. It was I started to
claustrophobia. You probably definitely have that small spaces.
I almost couldn't make it.
No, I think, having empathy towards persons and, their phobias or the disorders that they experience, I think it's healthy helpful for us to encourage them. And then for us to be educated on it as well. And not to be, not to be obnoxious or disregard someone else's
games
feelings.
Because now you're triggering them into some other response.
Yeah. I mean, we could be really horrible as humans, right?
Bullyish.
Yeah. But we live and we learn.
Right.
You know,
Growth.
Growth.
These pods are very helpful, hopefully.
Oh man. So I wanted to run down. So, you know, again, I wanted to speak about anxiety and the feelings of anxiety and the symptoms of anxiety on this pod in particular because of, you know, how I entered this year and knowing that there are others that may have entered this year the same way, or, you know, just go through each day or each week or each month, you know, with these anxious feelings, right? These episodes that aren't normal, and, you know, just trying to encourage all of us to gain a sense of control. So I just wanted you to run down certain treatments or certain practices or exercises that everyone can do, you know, on a daily basis to kind of curb these anxious feelings that we have.
Yeah, so like we were talking about the breathing exercises, practicing it in the morning, at night, things like yoga, mindfulness, grounding exercises, coping statements. You can look them up online. This is a anxious feeling, nothing to really worry about. I can get through this. I've been through this before. Don't worry, be happy. Those type of things, maybe biblical verses that can help with dysregulating the negative thoughts dysregulate who you are and they cause your bodily functions to increase, but disengaging those negative thoughts and now putting into positive ones is always very important. And having people that are accommodating, not triggering, is always a plus as well.
I feel like you might as well just add me just now.
I'm just, you know, just saying. Come into your therapist too. Like having somebody to talk to on a regular basis to try to change those thoughts.
No, that's what I wanted to mention too, because you said something that like really just set a light off in my mind, right? And it's having mental checkups. I think that's something that we all should be doing, right? Because we all, and you know, everyone doesn't even do physical checkups, right?
The poor,
even though they should, but you know, it's something that I think, in addition to, you know, going for our yearly physicals, we need to go for our yearly mentals as well.
Education is key. Knowledge is wealth, and so knowing that these things are in place helps the people to do it, right? So I speak about 1% changes. It's not about changing yourself 100% every day. Those 1% wins, trying to be better, do better. So now that you know, seeing that you've watched the pod, that you're supposed to do it, go out and do it, not just hear it, but actually put it into practice.
So who do you see? Do you see a psychiatrist? Do you see a therapist? Like who?
Obviously, I'm going to promote psychiatry because that's what I do, right? Because if I do see that, you know, these psychotherapy interventions aren't working, I can prescribe medication. And so, you know, having that holistic treatment is always very important.
Got you. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on. Go ahead, babe.
So you spoke about fear and anxiety. Are they two in the same? Are they the same thing, or are we conflating both with?
So anxiety is that fear. The disorder is when you have this fear and it is now consuming you, where you're not being functionable. Like you're not able to work, you're not able to go out day to day. So we spoke about the agoraphobia that now has you inside. You're not able to go outside. So that is where the disorder comes in. So everybody has a fear or anxiety. That's synonymous. But the actual disorders that come under the umbrella are the things that are now causing you not to focus, not to do your day-to-day task, and then maybe develop into other disorders like depression, suicide, etc.
So anxiety is normal?
Technically, yes. Technically.
Why you say technically?
Because, I mean, I don't want anybody to feel like you should be anxious. Yeah. Well, be anxious for nothing.
But you're saying, at least if I'm hearing you correctly,
right,
you're saying that, you know, we all are going to feel a sense of anxiousness or fear, but it's what you allow that anxious feeling or that fear to do to you that determines if you have a disorder.
Right.
So if it consumes you and you have this avoidance of, you know, going into public or, you know, facing that thing that you're anxious about, then you may need to seek, you know, some help.
Right. Or just being anxious with nothing even as a trigger. So yeah, like I said, but how we opened up, anxiety is normal essentially, because that's the fear, the flight or flight response. That's what the body is supposed to do when you're in a situation where it's abnormal.
Okay. All right.
I have one question from a viewer.
A viewer.
What do you do when you can't identify the source of anxiety?
So that's when we try to take it apart. Like, what exactly are those negative thoughts that you're feeling?
But you can't do it by yourself. Though.
No.
Right.
So that's what the importance of coming in, having the talk therapist and the psychiatrist do. Mm. So we could see, where is this stemming from? Like, what are you... Maybe you're recognizing it as a dog, but maybe that's some other childhood trauma that you might have been dealing with, and now it's just sugar-coated as this other thing. Maybe we need to dig a little deeper and figure out what is the source of this thing that is now coming up.
People that have anxiety really figuring out what the root cause of the anxiety
correct.
is. Yeah.
So you'll say that there's always a root cause of anxiety.
Not necessarily, because that's what the panic attacks are, right? And that's what the generalized anxiety, it's just this worry about any possible thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a causative agent, but just trying to refocus that thinking is what's going to be the most important thing.
Okay.
Any more questions, sir? No. All right, well, Dr. Knowles-Robinson, thank you so much for joining us on this pod and talking about this conversation. I would love to, I always tell you this, I'd love to have you come back on a continuous basis just to, kind of deal with these topics. I'd love to share my experiences and my recommendations on these topics, but I also want to bring persons on who are, certified and credible, to speak on it. And also so that I don't get in trouble.
People that went to school for like 50 years, it's important.
No, for sure. So I want to pivot. I know I had you on before, but I didn't get to ask you this question, and I wanted to ask you this question. This is going to come out of left field, right? I didn't prep you for this, but I want to get your natural response, right? And the question is. This is a question I ask all the guests that come on. Don't be nervous. Don't be anxious.
Be anxious for nothing. Oh, let me get it.
No, but I ask each guest that comes on the pod this question, and the question is simply, how do you define success?
So success is something that you personally value. So where is your purpose? And so, like I spoke about being purpose-driven, if I feel as though I am meeting what God has intended me to be, I am successful. And it does look different day to day, because waking up, I'm successful because I have the opportunity to grow, to learn, to be a mother, to be a wife, to be a psychiatrist. So success, I think, is those 1% wins, not necessarily the holistic picture. So success as a global thinking, I guess, would be me living on my purpose.
Sure. That's the small wins, guys. They matter. Don't think of them as irrelevant or not a part of the bigger picture. Being successful in the small wins is
success.
What gets us to that ultimate level of success.
Correct.
In our lives. I like that. Love that. So that brings us to a portion of the pod where I'm able to leave with you a milestone. The milestone today, pretty simple. Worrying doesn't empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength. All right. We spoke about, not being able to control certain things and things that we can, we just have to let go. Right. There's no way that we can determine how things play out. What happens tomorrow, what happens a month from now. So worrying doesn't empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength. So let's focus on what we can control. Let's control those things, and let's get ourselves, our minds, our physical bodies in order, so that we'll be able to live out our purpose on this earth and be successful in doing so. All right. So Ms. Knowles-Robinson, thank you again so much. We're going to put your information on the screen here, but you can say it for those persons who are listening if they wanted to get in contact with you to have that mental checkup that we discussed.
Okay. I do work publicly and privately. Privately, I work at Oak Tree Medical Center, but they can reach me at Dr. Knowles at Oak Tree Medical Center, spelled The American Way, CENTER.com.
So for our international audience, that
I'm not covered in the States.
Oh, got you.
Unless you have,
international
right
insurance,
then can get at me.
Unfortunately, but we recommend finding a psychiatrist in your area, in your city, in your country, because again, I'm always going to say your mental health is just as important as your physical health, and I think I'm going to commit to getting, in addition to my annuals, get my mental checkups as
always
well.
Important.
No, for sure. Well, that brings us to the end of this pod. This was a good one. Hopefully there was some great information that was shared. We have to do this again at some point. But as always, the goal of this pod is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist. Always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right, until next time, you guys stay blessed. You keeping that.